Welcome to A Slice with Dice, where education meets inspiration and leadership meets real life. I'm Corey Alderdice, Executive Director of the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts. With 2 decades in school leadership, I'll share what I've learned from walking the tightrope between policy and practice, especially when it comes to doing right by gifted students and their futures. Ready to dive in? Here's this week's Slice. We're tackling a topic that makes even confident high school seniors tighten up. How to talk about yourself in a college admissions essay without sounding self-impressed. You see, the goal isn't to sell a finished product. It's to introduce a real person, self-aware, specific, still in motion. Let me start with a quick scene. It's dark 30 on a weekday morning. The city bus heater rattles like it's thinking about quitting. Across the aisle, Miss Rosa, who's headed to the early shift, hands you her thermos. You've been trading small talk for weeks, but today she asks you about your calculus quiz. You hesitate, then try explaining derivatives in Spanish. It's clumsy. You wave your pen in the air, draw a slope on the fogged window. She nods, then shows you the schedule she's trying to optimize around 2 jobs and a nephew's daycare pickup. Suddenly, rate of change has a face and a clock. That's a tiny moment, but it does more than any sweeping biography ever could. It places you somewhere real, a bus, a community. It puts you in conversation with another person. It reshapes a subject you thought you already understood. And it points toward who you might be in the process of becoming. That's the heartbeat of an authentic college essay. I like to frame this process with 5 questions, not as a checklist, but as a rhythm you can feel while you write. First, what's the one moment only you can tell? In what world were you standing in? Too many essays try to cover the whole life story. You don't need your origin, challenge, and triumph all in 650 words. One specific scene, an hour, a bus ride, a Saturday shift, a late-night rehearsal, can carry the weight if it's yours and it's grounded in your lived context. Your context can be anything that truly shapes the way your days go. A small town with 1 stoplight. A dense neighborhood with 3 languages on the block, a family business that bleeds into homework time, a church kitchen, a marching bus, a makerspace, a farm field after rain. When you choose a scene, let at least one other person appear. Dialogue, either real or paraphrased, adds oxygen. It keeps you from writing a monologue about yourself, and it invites the reader into a relationship, which is what college is. Second, what changed in you because of that moment? Stories become essays when they move from scene to insight. That doesn't mean that you deliver a moral of the story paragraph, but it means you show a before and an after. Before the bus ride, I treated math like a private language. After, I started measuring understanding by whether someone else could use it. The reflection doesn't have to be long. In fact, a single, precise sentence at the right time will do more than 3 broad ones. A helpful drafting move is to write the scene first. What was seen, heard, said, done, and only then ask, what did this change about the way I think, decide, or show up? If the answer is still foggy, you might not have the right scene yet. Keep zooming until the shift comes into focus. Third, how can you sound mature without self-mythologizing? Readers can feel the difference between confidence and a highlight reel. Use plain, precise language. Share credit when it's due. Admit limits and name what you're doing about them. I still freeze when plans change. This year, I signed up for the last lab slot, where nothing runs on time. That kind of line lands because it's specific about both the flaw and the practice. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's placing yourself in the picture accurately. One player on a team, a learner among teachers, a neighbor among neighbors. If you catch yourself writing that you single-handedly transformed anything, take a breath and look for the verbs that tell the truth. Listened, learned, coordinated, asked, tried again. Fourth, how does this moment point toward your goals, and why that college? The Bessays don't tack on fit at the end like a brochure. They let the core theme naturally bridge to your next steps. If the moment shows you learning to translate ideas across languages or contexts, name how that trajectory grows on a specific campus. Maybe that looks like a community-engaged scholars program that pairs coursework with local clinics, or a writing center where you can tutor peers and keep refining how you explain complex ideas, or a research lab that studies bilingual health communication, or a design studio where you prototype tools for real users in your city. Name what's real at that school. Courses, labs, centers, partnerships, advising models, and show how it extends to the exact growth you've demonstrated in your scene. You see, fit is alignment, not flattery. If you can swap the school name and your sentence still makes sense, you probably haven't dug deep enough. Fifth, how will your ending echo your opening? Great short writing often clicks shut at the end by returning to the first image or idea with new meaning. If you begin in the bus aisle, you might end there too, but with one detail shifted. A spare thermos you pack for Miss Rosa, a translated diagram tucked in your backpack, or a question you're still chewing on. That echo is less about being clever and more about showing coherence. You started somewhere real, and you're still connected to it. Structure helps with readability more than any fancy turn of phrase, short paragraphs, clear transitions, an opening that catches attention without gimmicks, and a close that resonates without becoming a TED Talk conclusion. As you draft, keep the voice in the self-aware, not self-impressed lane. And that can feel like a tightrope, but you have more balance than you think. One simple way to stay centered is to alternate lines of action with lines of reflection. Action. What happened, to whom, where, with which textures and sounds. Reflection. What you realized, decided, or began to practice differently. Action draws us into your world. Reflection lets us see how you build meaning. Go back and forth, scene to insight, like breathing. A word on identity and context. You don't have to explain it all of who you are in one essay. You do want to show how a real part of your world shapes the moment you've chosen. If your story lives at the intersection of race and school culture, let that show in the details. A teacher mispronouncing your name until you correct them. An aunt's proverb that becomes your lab mantra. A community pantry where you translate a flyer that unlocks access for a neighbor. If geography is central, we should feel it underfoot. The cracked parking lot at the feed store, the smell of diesel before sunrise, the 3-mile walk because the bus doesn't run late enough after practice. If faith or family or language is part of the frame, let it appear as it appears in life, woven into conversation, not pasted as an explanation. And readability over creativity will save you. Creativity isn't the enemy, it's just not the boss. Your strongest tools are clarity, specificity, and clean structure. When you write like you talk when you care, you use verbs that move. Prefer plain words over ornate ones. If a sentence sounds like something you wouldn't say out loud to a teacher you respect, simplify it. Here, try the phone test. Paste your draft into a note and read it on a small screen. Do your eyes want to keep going? Or do you feel the weight of dense paragraphs and long sentences? Trim. Break. Breathe. The Common App gives you 650 words. That's not a prison. It's a design constraint. A good constraint that makes you choose what matters. Now, let's talk about how to find your scene if you're staring at a blinking cursor. Think about places where you regularly interact with other people in unscripted ways. The band closet, when a pad pops off a bass clarinet and you learn to repair it with cork and patience. The public library's help desk, where your tech volunteer badge means troubleshooting Wi-Fi for a grandfather who just wants to FaceTime a new baby. The grocery store line, where you translate coupon rules for a neighbor and notice the cashier's quiet interventions when cards decline. The cross-country meet, where you hand water to a competitor because no race is worth the trip to the ER. None of these are resume lines, but each could be a hinge. Ask what changed in you because you were there. And editing is where an average draft becomes a true introduction to you. Try these low-drama moves. Read the first 2 lines aloud. Do they invite curiosity without coyness? If the opening is a thesis statement, see if you can back up and begin with a more concrete image instead. Next, find the most honest sentence in the whole draft, the one where you admit a limit, name a fear, or commit to a practice. Put it closer to the front than you think. Finally, look for the last line. If it's advice to the reader, cut it. If it's a quote you found on a poster, cut it. If it echoes your first image with new meaning, keep it. A quick note about tone. Your essay isn't a legal brief, a lab report, or a stand-up routine. It's closer to a letter. You're writing to a human who will read dozens of essays that day. Help them see in you in a single setting by letting them see the one moment clearly. If you built your life in a family business, don't feel pressure to frame everything as leadership. If your proudest work happened in your church's childcare room or your neighbor's garage, trust that those spaces count. Admissions readers are very good at spotting genuine ownership, care, and growth wherever they show up. Now, what about the college connection without turning the essay into a brochure? Think of it as a handoff. You've shown a through line, say translating ideas so that they work in real lives. The handoff names 1 or 2 specifics that continue that through line. A community-partnered course that takes you into clinics. A bilingual tutoring program where you'd serve and learn. A research group measuring how clear instructions change patient outcomes. An advising model that pairs first-gen students with faculty mentors. A living learning community that builds bridges between the campus and the city. You don't need a list. You just need a match. If your essay is about building things that help people, literal things like a tool cart you designed for the school custodian, then name the design studio or the makerspace where you'll test the next version with users who aren't like you. If your essay is about caring for younger siblings and discovering you're good at turning chaos into routines, maybe it's the Education Studies course on learning differences or the campus childcare research lab that gives you a lens you haven't had. It's also okay to acknowledge that you're not done growing. In fact, it's compelling. A line like, "I'm still clumsy at translation of language and sometimes of feeling, but I've started keeping a notebook of phrases that work and questions that opens doors." A statement like that says, "I'm in progress and I have a practice." Colleges are in the business of educating people who want to keep learning. Leave the door open. And before you hit submit, ask yourself briefly 5 questions you don't need to write down to remember. Is my scene unmistakably mine and grounded in my real world? Did I show a clear shift in the way I think or act? Do I sound grounded and in progress, not perfect, not a product? Does the close quietly echo the opening? And can a stranger see how this moment points to concrete next steps a particular college can offer? If you're listening as a parent or counselor, your role is simple but vital. Ask students what they noticed, not what they accomplished. Listen for verbs. When a student says, "I had to watch my little brother every day," ask, "What did you start doing differently by week 2? That's the before-after. When a student apologizes for a story that isn't big, remind them that readers learn most about character when the stakes are small and the choices daily. Let's close where we began. The bus heater rattles again, a familiar percussion in winter. You've packed a spare thermos now because, of course, Miss Rosa will be there. You also tucked a one-page diagram into your backpack. A simple chart with arrows and times, the math plain and usable. You're not the hero of her story. You're a neighbor who learned to explain an idea in a way that might save her 10 minutes on a particularly hard day. And you're a student who realized that understanding isn't finished until someone else can use it. That's the tone to aim for. Specific, relational, in progress. In 650 words, show us one moment only you can tell. Let it change you on the page. Loop your ending to your beginning so the readers feel the click. And point forward to the place where that growth will continue. You see, admissions offices don't expect a finished product. They're looking for a good fit for a community of learners. Introduce yourself like you're someone they'll be glad to see on the bus tomorrow. Thermos in hand, questions ready, and still becoming. A Slice with Dice is a production of Aldercube. Thanks for making time to reflect with me. If you're finding value in these episodes, I hope you'll subscribe and help spread the word. Until next week, lead boldly, listen closely, and keep pushing forward. I'll see you then.